PNM family, we move right into our next speaker, who is a career public servant, an economist, a former permanent secretary of both the Ministry of Energy and Finance. He has served as High Commissioner of Canada and the UK. He is the former Minister of Finance. Please join me in giving a San Fernando East welcome to Senator Vishnu Dhanpaul.
Free pass, a YouTube account and a lead blast, a nice little house and green grass. These are some of the vilest creatures. And if you come here with a weak heart, you go pass out before the week pass. This worse than cheap as creepers, werewolf monsters and reapers. I come from a...
The political leader of the People's National Movement, opposition leader of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, member of Parliament for Arima, and a lady who has never once tried to bust my head. I have to confess that. You know, for me, it is surreal, because I'm from Woodbrook, it is surreal always to be in a constituency of San Fernando East. Because I say without fear, Patrick Manning was my mentor. And he treated me like family. And you know, driving down here, something crossed my mind. Calypso Fiesta. I would not like to be a UNC supporter walking through Calypso Fiesta in 2026. Calypso Fiesta next year is going to be brutal. So a bit about me. And I don't really have much to say about myself. I'm not narcissistic in the least. But I have a record that no one in the UNC can claim. Not one person in the UNC can claim. Do you know that I've worked on every single budget of every single UNC administration? So they could run, but they can't hide. I worked on all the budgets of Brian Quaitong. I worked on the single budget of Gerard Yatming. I worked on the 2 budgets of Winston Dukaran. I worked on the 3 budgets of Larry Hawaii, who is now the governor of the Central Bank. So I have a lot of goodwill with the Honorable Prime Minister. That's why I like to give her advice, because sometimes I feel she's not being well advised. So Budget 2026 will be very interesting, because I will fact check them to death. You can try to fool some of the people, some of the times. But guess what? You can't fool Vishnu Dhanpaul when it comes to budgets. But seeing that I'm the only person here without a cheerleading section, I don't know, just guessing. Hands, I could take a borrow. All right. I'm just here to not spoil the party, but as the political leader wants me to do all the time, bring balance to the discussion. Okay? And I'm here to tell you 2 things, just 2 things. To tell you about something that's trending called tariffs, and to tell you what you can expect in Budget 2026. I wrote it for them already, right? And I can tell you exactly what will be in Budget 2026. So let's deal with tariffs. I'm sure you've been hearing about all these tariffs, what tariffs could do, and it may sound boring, but I'm telling you, if you trivialize the impact of tariffs, the economy will be destroyed. Simple. Do not, and me personally, I think I have the view that the current administration is trivializing the impact of tariffs. That 15% could lead to, let me tell you, that 15% could lead to several negatives. The decline in the accumulation of foreign exchange. One. And you think it's difficult now? Two, the reduction in export volumes, because your exports are now more expensive going into the United States. So your exports are now less competitive in the United States market. And I cannot blame the Trump administration, because the Trump administration has applied these tariffs mainly to countries where they see or there's a negative terms of trade with that country, meaning that this, like us, we export more to the United States, significantly more to the United States, believe it or not, than we, in value terms, that we import from the United States, mainly because of the oil and gas, which are in fact exempt from tariff. The business chamber came out and they said they're worried about the market access to the United States, as they should, and the overall profitability of the exporters of Trinidad and Tobago, as they should. Another impact, inflation. You think prices are high now? I am sending a warning to the government from Vishnu Dhanpaul. Do not trivialize that 15% tariff. When you have declining foreign exchange earnings, there's only one road you're heading down: devaluation. Okay? Something that the government needs to keep an eye on. You disrupt supply chains. You create problems for people to get inputs. You're going to drive up prices and inflation. So the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned three responses. Well, she started off saying that the government will respond in three ways. First, negotiate with the United States. Negotiate what? There must be a point to negotiate from, but I will give some ideas shortly. She said she's going to look for alternative markets. All right? Nothing is wrong with that. You can expand existing markets, look for alternative markets. The Indian Prime Minister was just here. Who knows what can happen with India? The Ghanaian delegation was just here. Who knows what can happen with Africa? All right? Not a bad idea. But my response would be, you have to negotiate with the United States with Trinidad and Tobago reducing the tariff of United States products into Trinidad. You either take the hit on the foreign exchange, or you take the hit on the revenue. If you reduce the tariff rate on goods coming from the United States into Trinidad and Tobago, you reduce the import duty, the revenue coming into Trinidad. Are you prepared to take it from there? Or are you prepared to stay at 15%, 12% and lose out on the foreign exchange? Those are your two options. Pick. If I had to choose, I would choose losing out on the revenue, because I could always impact that revenue again. So those are the options that I would give the Honorable Prime Minister and her government. But I would also give a few others. They can establish a trade impact desk within the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Tourism. Nothing is wrong with that. Provide tariff impact calculators, advisory support, and market entry grants for new trading regions. Continue the dialogue with the United States, because there's nothing to stop the Trump administration from sending the tariff up to 20% next month, you know. or 25. There's nothing to stop them from doing that. Once you run a balance of trade, a negative balance of trade with them, you can do it. You can deepen intra-CARICOM trade by enhancing regional supply chain linkages and strengthen the CARICOM single market and economy. You could pursue and deepen trade and investment agreements with alternate partners. There's Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. And you can expand trade facilitating infrastructure, like expand your ports and logistics, etc. But let me tell you something that people seem to be missing. I'm trying to remember the Jamaican, the dancehall artist who sang "Life is a Cycle." What was his name? DJ Richie Spice. Life is a vicious cycle, you know, right? A vicious cycle. Let me tell you why. Because when you put pressure on already vulnerable economies, like that tariff is going to do in the Caribbean, you're creating the potential for unemployment, because a lot of businesses may go out of business. And what you're doing there, you are just assisting the gang culture. And let me show you where the vicious cycle is. You're creating the gang culture. And me personally, I have never seen a gun factory in Trinidad. I have never seen a coca plant in Trinidad. But when you put pressure on vulnerable economies and you create and you enhance this gang culture, the vicious cycle is, guess what? For the drugs and the arms, the Caribbean is not the final destination. That's the last I would say on that. But I would repeat, the Caribbean is not the final destination. So you put pressure on vulnerable economies as a large first world country, you do it at your own risk. So, what to expect from the budget? I can tell you the first thing you can expect from the budget, a deficit budget. Expenditure significantly higher than, there's a difference between what you expect in the budget from what you would like in the budget. Significantly different. You're going to expect increased borrowing because you have to finance this increased deficit. The assumptions behind the budget, they're going to use the same oil and gas assumptions that they use in the mid-year review. What you can expect in the budget, hopefully, the negotiations for the 10% for public servants will start. But from the time, I remember the head of the PSA didn't say 10%, you know. A lot of people, as we say in Trinidad, getting tied up. She did not say 10%. She said she's starting at 10%. And when you start at 10%, you could go down, you know. You're aware of that, right? Okay, just saying. Also, just today, and I find it a bit worrying, today the government signed a production sharing contract with ExxonMobil. The investment is probably worth around 22 billion US. Not million, 22 billion. And what I find rather interesting is this Mr. John Adil, who is the vice president and in charge of global exploration for ExxonMobil, mentioned in his speech today that it has been an intense 6 months of negotiations. What does that mean? That the negotiations started under the PNM. And for that, I have to thank, and we have to thank former Minister of Energy, Stuart Young. And Minister Dr. Munilal himself also said during that ceremony that the government approved the transaction in December 2024. But we'll be keeping an eye on that transaction because it has the ability to take Trinidad and Tobago to the next stage. And yet another oil boom could be on the horizon. And that has to be managed and monitored carefully. But I will tell you this, the input or the revenue would not come in tomorrow, you know. That gas and oil would not be monetized until about 2028, 2029. Guess what's in 2030? For the most. So what you can expect, how many people here are retired public servants? You know what you can expect in the budget? And insist that you get it? No taxes on your pension. You can ask for it. And you know what you can expect in the budget? Because they said it over and over on the campaign trail, a reduction in the price of fuel. You think these promises coming to pass? But on behalf of everyone here, and on behalf of the country, I'll be there to fact check. But you know what they're also planning to do, and I suspect this, and this could create a lot of havoc in the economy. I think they're going to be tapping in to the Heritage and Civilization Fund. I think the scenario is there, the stage is set for accessing the Heritage and Civilization Fund. And I think that is where we're going to have serious problems. Now, some advice to the Honorable Prime Minister. Now, you notice I didn't say advice to the Honorable Minister of Finance. Let me speak to the Prime Minister. Makes sense. Oh, by the way, just before I go on, I just remembered something. I like to challenge people, all right? I like to challenge the present government. But I'm not challenging any short man to walk through Calypso Fiesta, okay? And no way. I'm not taking that chance. Faris, you could go ahead with that. The Prime Minister said today that talks are underway with the World Bank, the IFC, and the IDB to raise money. Now, there are two sides to this. The World Bank lends to, this is the World Bank, not the World Bank Group, this is the World Bank, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the IBRD. They lend to countries at specific rates. We have been described as a high-income country, so they lend at high interest rates to us, much less than they will lend to a medium and low-income country. All right? So it is easier for us to access commercial borrowing. That would be my first advice to the Prime Minister. Forget all that old talk about multilateral borrowing because there are conditionalities attached to them. Go, if you have to borrow, go to the commercial bank, whether it's domestic or external. Second piece of advice to the Prime Minister. They're speaking about PPPs, public-private partnerships, as though there's no sovereign component. When you borrow money and you have things like PPPs, and the government is part of the PPP, and one partner defaults, Guess who has to pick it up? The government. Be careful of those things. Those guys are moving around buzzwords, economic buzzwords and MBA buzzwords like what? Exactly. They're just moving around and saying and doing whatever they want. And finally, this old talk about they met a crashed economy. I say it over and over again. Have you heard that they said the economy has crashed and it would go on at 2.6 billion? So how come they didn't find the 2.6 billion yet? You know why? It never went anywhere. It is physically impossible to take $2.6 billion out of the central bank. It doesn't work like that. It is just simply, and you know what? The Auditor General will come next year and say, you know, it was really a glitch. That's the sad part about it, thing. And also, you know, when I was growing up, I'm going to show you how this crash economy old talk is a lot of old talk. When I was growing up, you could tell the age of a car by the series, right? Every year, because every year they change one series. So you know, in 1 year, a car could be 20 years because of the alphabet, right? But right now in Trinidad and Tobago, we change a series once every quarter. So that means 9,999 vehicles come onto the road every quarter. Who are the people purchasing these vehicles? Is that the sign of a crash economy? Where people getting this money? And just before I wrap up, one final piece of statistic. I'm going to repeat that every time I have a chance to. It's something called credit to the private sector. In other words, how much loans, how many loans are that people in the economy that you take from commercial banks. Here it is. This is a crash economy. Yeah? In 2022, $66 billion from business and consumer loans. In 2023, $71 billion. In 2024, $78 billion. And in April of 2025, in a crash economy, where people are seeing confidence in the economy, $80 billion. So if that's a crash economy, then I don't know economics. I will leave that to the Minister of Finance to respond to. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to be here in San Fernando.